Welcome back to the Soar Higher podcast. Great to have you back this week. We've got a great show in store for you today. Today, we're going to kick off a 3-part series on things leaders should be thinking about and doing over the next 3 to 4 months as they close out the rest of this year and start thinking about things in the right way for the next year. And so this is the time of year where 3/4 of the year have been exhausted. Leaders should be thinking about, well, how did the first 3 quarters go? What went well? What didn't go so well? What are the areas we need to be looking at? What are the priorities we need to have going into the fourth quarter, starting in October? What adjustments do we need to be making in order to position ourselves in the best position to close out 2022 in the best possible way? And so at the same time, you're focusing on how to finish strong in the current year in the fourth quarter. You also, as a leader, need to be thinking about what's around the corner for 2023. This is the time of year for which leaders and organizations should be starting their strategic planning process. What are the things we are going to take away from this year that need to be rolled into next year? What are the lessons learned? What are our priorities going to be? What are our goals going to be? How do we take the company to the next level? And laying out those details in a very logical manner. So when January rolls around, everybody comes back from the holidays, the entire organization has a plan that they can see where they fit into that plan and how to start achieving those things going forward. And so today we're kicking off the first of these series. And so today we want to focus on end of year closeout. What needs to happen in the fourth quarter for you to succeed? And so today, to help us in this conversation, I've brought my really good friend, Alan Priest from the Alan Priest CPA firm, headquartered out of Louisville, Kentucky. Alan, welcome to the show. Great to have you on the show today.
Thanks for inviting me along, Jason. I think this will be fun. Hopefully we can provide some information that will help some folks.
Yeah. Well, I know you are just a really great source of good knowledge and have gone through this process many times with many clients. And I know I'm excited to have this conversation because I think the viewers will get a lot out of it. So, Alan, tell us a little bit about you. Introduce yourself to the guests that listen to our show.
I've been in public accounting practice for a long time. Almost hesitate to say how long because it dates me, but I have been in practice now for 40 years. Started very young, actually. Got out of college at age 20. Went right into public accounting practice, and have been in a couple of different firms as I've moved through my career. But my whole career, I have focused on serving small businesses. As I say today, we serve small businesses and their owners. Small being, some of them are just side gigs, everything up to $25 and $30 million with multiple manufacturing facilities. And their owners. So we're primarily, I've always been in the small business owner managed space, which is the part I really enjoy doing because I think it's a place where what I can bring to the table really helps people.
Yeah. I can definitely relate to that. I think a lot of our viewers can as well. So tell it, Alan, how did you get started in being a certified public accountant? How did you get started in this business? Why did you decide to open up your own business? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I'm one of those weird people who kind of had an idea what they wanted to do very young. I had a couple of uncles who were in the business. So I had a little idea about what it was about, but part of the issue was as I just saw these guys managing their own businesses, and I thought I wanted to do that. I also saw them with a real variety of stuff that they did. I'm not a person who wants to do the same thing every single day. And as I watched my uncle's work, because it was close enough I could see that, I saw they were involved in a whole lot of different stuff. So I thought that was interesting. As I took accounting classes all the way back into high school, I had some opportunity to do that at the school that I attended. I found that I had some aptitude for it. So that was kind of cool. You think I'm interested in it, and then it's like I enjoy what I'm doing, and it seems to come fairly easy. So I went ahead and went to University of Illinois, which is a very I was living in Illinois, so it was the in-state school, but I was very fortunate in that it has a very well-regarded accounting program. So, and then when I got done, I had to figure out where I was going from here. Out of the accounting program, when I graduated, the national accounting firms hired, I don't know, 90% of my class, and I had offers to go with many with six of the different 8 national firms at the time, and I turned them all down to come to Louisville, Kentucky, to take a job with the lowest pay offer that I had in a local firm here. It happened to be my uncle's firm. And I came here because I thought I would have the opportunity to work much more closely with businesses at a much quicker pace, and I looked at it and I said, I don't know about being the junior auditor on the Procter and Gamble audit up in Cincinnati is going to be something that I find very exciting, as opposed to being able to jump in and work closely with business owners almost from the very beginning. And that's what I had an opportunity to do. So I was at that firm for a really long time, and then some things, and was a partner there for a long time. Some things changed, and I went to a different local firm um, with an idea that I would take that firm over, and some things changed again. So I just said, hey, I'm going to set up my own gig, and then I can control exactly what happens. And that's what I've done. So for the last 6 years, I've been practicing this way. We have a virtual firm, so everybody works from home on the team. And the cool thing about having a virtual firm is not everybody else to be in the same city that you're in. So you can pick and choose people from anywhere who fit the model about what you're doing. You have to hire very differently. You have to have a different
Yep.
sort of person. But that's a really fun environment to be in. It also meant when COVID hit, we didn't have to do anything different. We were already doing it this way. So it made life a lot simpler when COVID time came. We didn't change what we were doing, which was kind of nice.
Yeah.
And again, like I said, I serve primarily all my entire career. I've served this type of business and this type of business owner, which is the type I really like working with.
Yeah. Well, that's really good. Alan is a good Christian guy, very humble guy. If you ever get to know him, very well respected. He's one of the top CPA firms here in the Louisville metropolitan area, and just his clients rave about him. I got introduced to him a few years ago and just been thoroughly impressed. He's just got something, you just got something special about you that's just different than other CPA groups that I've met out there in the world. And Alan also, he hadn't mentioned this, but he also is a military veteran. He served. How long did you serve in the Army?
I when I got commissioned, it was right about the time of the big Reagan expansion, and they pulled a big chunk of my year group in as active duty second lieutenants. I went reserve. I had a guaranteed reserve contract, so I spent almost 10 years as an Army Reserve officer. I was a platoon leader. I was company
Wow.
command. I was a platoon executive officer. Platoon. I was a company commander for almost 3 years. A detachment commander. I spent all my time in command positions except for about 8 months that I was an XO, and and which was a great experience. I was really glad I did it. And then I was glad when I stopped doing it. It was awfully demanding. They talk about reservist and National Guard as being twice the citizen, because
Hmm.
you spend so much time in your military career. It's not 1 weekend a month. In my case, I was like not at the reserve center 1 weekend a month. I was there 3, and
Hmm.
and it was and it was a great experience. When can you be 23 years old and have $60 million equipment and 168 soldiers? And that's what I had at age
Ha.
23. So it was a company commander. So it was really great experience for me, and I wouldn't trade the experience for anything in the world. I was also, when I stopped doing it, I was glad I had stopped doing it. I had a young son, and it was kind of like, I don't know
Yeah.
what's going to happen, and I think I'm just going to be. I've served and done what I told them I would do, and so I was ready to move on to something else.
Understand. Well, Alan, thank you for your service and all those sacrifices that you and your family made during that. A lot of people sometimes don't quite understand that full effect, and so as a retired military person myself, I have a little bit of insight to that, and so thank you for your service. And I think it's interesting your background because the discipline, the rigor, the things that you need to be successful in a military organization. I think a lot of those things carry over into like a firm like you have, a CPA firm, right? Where you got to be disciplined to the process. You've got to be disciplined to make sure you follow the law and there's compliance to the laws and statutes for which people need to run their businesses financially. Discipline to manage your budget correctly, and just all of those things. I think, from my perspective, from the outside looking in, have maybe helped you and your clients be even more successful, because it's really that discipline that allows people the freedom. And I think that's what you're about, right? Your slogan is taking the mystery out of finances, so people have the opportunity and the freedom to accumulate as much wealth as they desire. And so I see a lot of parallels there myself. And I again, just thank you for your service.
Yeah, you develop two different ways of looking, Jason. You look forward and you look
Yeah,
back, so you got to plan like crazy for what you think might happen. And you know that what you plan for is never going to work quite that way, but the planning prepares you for what will happen. And then
that's
just as
right.
importantly, you have to stop and look back and say, how did we do? And what could we have done better?
Hmm.
How do we take, what did we learn in this process so that when we come through it the next time, we'll be better than what we were this time. And both of those things are something that you do, and that I learned to do probably as much as anything through military stuff. And that carries over into what we do today, because we're planning about what will come forward, and that's kind of what we're talking about today. We're planning about what will
Yeah.
come forward, but we also have to look back and see where we've come, and see if that makes sense, see if there's things we need to adjust, and learn from what we've been doing. So both of those things come into play.
Well, that's a great segue, Alan. I wanted to kind of pivot a little bit here and kind of dig in and get your perspective on what's going on in the world today from your perspective, right? I mean, we've gone through, unfortunately, a pandemic. We've got the Great Resignation. We've got the stock markets are down and all over the place, very volatile. We've got the price of gas and goods and things are going up and are just a kind of uh, a crazy time right now where there's a lot of like unpredictability and things like that. And it's caused people to have to think a little bit differently. Give us your insight of things you're seeing with your clients and, from the business sector of kind of what you think's going on and where the trends are going.
One of the good things of having some gray hair is that you've seen some things happen before.
Yeah.
So, I started my career with raging inflation, with mortgage interest rates, uh, very quickly after I started working, that moved up into the double digit area, 15 and
Mm.
16% mortgage rates, and business borrowing that was interest rates were double digit, and again, rapidly changing price inputs. So folks who have never experienced that, it's a real shock to it. When
Mm.
you've been through it, it's kind of like, okay, we kind of got a playbook to deal with this stuff. But it's been a difficult experience for many clients, as they've had to adjust to changes, and being able to make changes quickly enough. I mean, for example, I have a client that imports some materials from overseas, and a container coming from the Pacific had been running about $3,500 to get a container, full container here, and it
Mm.
had gone up to about $23,000 rather. So you had a
Whoa.
700% price increase. and over the course of about 6 or 8 months. So now certainly transportation doesn't include all the cost of what they're doing, but that's a huge price increase. And how do you adapt to it? And how do you educate your customers that if they want to continue to get product from you, the price has to go up, because if it doesn't, we're not going to be able to supply it anymore. So there's just a lot of that which has been difficult. I think the inflationary environment has been as much of a strain on the clients that I serve, that and the labor market. Folks who lost employees because of COVID or because of uncertain work period or the Great Resignation. They had some employees who just, there was a lot more competition for them, and they moved on to greener pastures from their perspective. So both of those things have been a tremendous challenge on top of just, are we going to be working this week because of COVID shutdowns? And it's made for some companies have had some of my clients have had a very difficult couple of years. I don't serve very many people in the hospitality area, so hospitality companies just got clobbered. Um, I've had some clients though over the last couple of years; they've had the best years they've ever had because of the type of markets that they're in, and the demand for what they were doing just soared. Um, if you did anything related to kitchen renovation, for example, or interior stuff, you just had a tremendous demand for your product, and if you could keep supplying it, you were able to gain market share, or certainly see the market expand tremendously. So it's been kind of a mixed bag. I've had some clients who you would never know a pandemic happened. I've had some clients who, because the pandemic happened, they've had some of the best years of their lives, and I've had some other folks who've really struggled. It's been a real mixed bag.
Well, let's break that down a little bit. I mean, those are some really great observations. So the folks that, let's say, their business was negatively impacted, they went backwards a little bit, they lost some revenue. What are some of the things that you're talking to them about? What are some options they have on the table if they were kind of negatively impacted by this?
Certainly, we've been through, and this is largely behind us, but not entirely. We've been through some of the governmental support programs. Some of that money is
Okay.
still out there. Certainly the PPP loan issues have gone, but we've still got people who haven't gotten forgiveness on those loans yet. So mainly just because they haven't applied. And then we've got some of the other employee retention credit stuff, which is out there and still eligible to be processed through the end of next year. Um, those things there have been others. I don't do much in the hospitality industry, but the shuttered venue money was out there and it was separate.
Hmm.
So those folks are still obtaining that funding and still having to account for that funding for the next couple of years. So those programs are out there. One of the common themes for folks, and even if it turned out that the year that COVID shutdowns didn't impact them quite so much, but one of the things that caused us to be able to focus on with clients again is cash planning. Cash flow doesn't happen by accident. And when times get difficult, cash flow planning and cash management becomes much, much more important. When things are fat, you can waste some money on some stuff, and folks do. When things start getting tighter, you can't afford to waste money. You've got to manage. You got to be on top of getting your receivables collected, because if somebody's not going to get paid, you don't want it to not be you, right? You want to make sure that your customers are paying you, and you want to make sure that if they're having issues, that you're on top of it, so you don't ship good money after bad. If you got a client, a customer rather, who looks like they're not going to make it, that we don't want to be their banker. So we've got to be on top of that and paying attention to the receivables, and just making sure we don't ship goods that we're not going to get paid for. Likewise, on the other side, if we can slow down who we're paying, we want to collect faster and pay out slower. Sometimes it's looking for alternative vendors for things. Can we find a way to get costs down, or manage that? Sometimes it's banking relationships. And And when folks come through a crisis like this, it changes their perspective on what debt means. Companies that started out this crisis period on a solid financial footing, people who were not in vast amounts of debt or had no debt at all and had some cash reserves, came through it a lot simpler, with a lot less
Hmm.
stress than folks who were living hand to mouth before they started. I mean, that's a personal finance thing that we work with our individual clients on, is getting debt loads minimized or gone. But the same thing applies to businesses. We the more solid the financial underpinning for the business, the less risk there is in the business, and the more opportunity you have to take advantage of stuff. If you had cash sitting around in the middle of COVID, you could pick up some stuff cheap. I just did. I just we're getting ready to move and expand our operation a little bit, and I needed some more office furniture. Well, when you buy office furniture at auction from a place that's shut down because of COVID, it's a lot less expensive than buying the same stuff brand new. And I mean, that was a project for me last week, and I got
Yeah.
a bunch of office furniture for about 40% of retail. So from a
Wow.
place that closed because of COVID, so that just gives you some opportunities if you're well financed.
Yeah, I've as I've studied this whole pandemic and all of the dynamics within it, the good, the bad, the ugly, one thing that I definitely take away is something you were kind of talking about here, is that if you're in business and you're planning correctly and you're always looking to grow and expand and creating cash reserves and those kind of things, expecting the market to go through these things. A lot of people don't. They're very nearsighted from what I've noticed. It's like, hey, what do we got to do tomorrow? And then what we got to do the day after that. And they don't think, 2, 3, 5, whatever years down the road. It's just kind of almost paycheck to paycheck kind of mentality, where the most successful people in business that I've seen and talked to and read about, the guy, I can't remember the guy's name off the top of my head. He owns the Houston Rockets. He owns the Landry's restaurant chains, and then he's got some hotel chains. And he he talks about in his writings, in his publications. He put out a book about a year and a half ago. I was reading; it was really, really great. And he talks about that entrepreneurial spirit of being opportunistic, knowing opportunities are always going to be there, and just being prepared to capitalize on them in the best possible way. When the best possible way, just like in the stock market, the best time to invest in things in the stock market is when they're on sale, when the market goes through a dip like
Yeah.
we're in right now. Same in business. A lot of people that don't run their businesses effectively, any little, disruption in the markets or any kind of disruption to that business at all, just knocks them out of the mix. And so people that are planning, people are more strategic minded, are able to come in and scoop businesses up and get them for pennies on the dollar, and then put the processes and things in place around them that have made their other businesses successful, and they take off and they make a lot of money doing that. And so I think there's some good lessons to be learned from that. And so, Alan, in your interactions with your folks that you're dealing with on a day-to-day basis, what's the kind of overall feeling of these business leaders? Are they nervous? Are they kind of holding on and seeing what's going to happen? Is there some fear there? Or are people kind of ready to move on and take some risk? Or what's kind of your general sense of things from your perspective there?
The folks that I serve more frequently than not are fairly small business owners, and they may be providing a service. Some of them are providing products, but by and large, right now, business is pretty good. And these are not, a recession doesn't hurt every business. I mean, it's just
Yeah.
In some cases, business has been growing so fast that part of the issue is just trying to make sure that growth doesn't run us out of business. We're trying to plan cash flow. We're trying to keep people, because you can only do what you can do, and there've been lots of opportunities out there, and if people are bouncing all over the place trying to pull every opportunity in, they get overcommitted with stuff. So as we've worked with folks over the last couple of years, we've been trying to make sure that our clients don't get overcommitted. I know there's some people that are doing that, because again, if things slow down and you're overcommitted, now you got a problem. If you still got some capacity, if you've got a fairly conservative financial statement, um, if things slow down, it's just not as much of an issue. So that, both of those things are important as business might be changing, but most of my clients that I'm dealing with are still not impacted by that, by any slowdown at this point, and the measures are a little bit different. Um, there've been a mixed signals on um, mixed signals on the progress of the economy, because unemployment is still very, very low. We're at full employment, and even if there's some employment that cut, that'll get us more back to what normally folks had thought of as full employment. The other thing that happens, or that has happened, over the last couple of years, partially due to COVID, you've had a lot of people left the workforce, and some of them are older, and they're probably not coming back. Some of them are older and they've just started trickling back a little bit. Um, but we still, you just drive around and you just see so many people still hiring. We're hiring, we're hiring, we're hiring. I was out of town at a wedding a couple of states away, and I drove through 4 states over the last few days. And every place I stopped, Kentucky, Virginia, Tennessee, North Carolina, every place told you, on the door, they told you they were hiring people. So things got to slow down quite a bit, I think, before that changes, particularly in the hospitality industry. Um, so it'll be interesting to see how this plays out, as they work to central bankers work to pull in a lot of money and get inflation under control. I think the wild card coming up is Europe. The war, and it's a war. I don't care what Putin wants to call it. Um, the impact is not so much on markets and things, because that war is kind of limited in an area, but it's the energy prices and the energy impact. And Europe gets a whole lot of energy from Russia, and that's going away right now. So they've got some interesting situations that are going to come up in manufacturing. And, if you can't get the energy, then you can't run the factory. What does that do? Well, it may slow down some things, but it may provide some opportunities on our side of the pond. What happened after World War II? After World War II, Europe was decimated. There wasn't much going on. And it was high times in the United States because we weren't impacted in that same way. Energy prices are going to go up this winter. I'm telling you that right now. I don't think there's any question about it. But does that keep you from being able to do what you're doing? Probably not. And there may be some market opportunities for folks, just because there's going to be some market problems in Europe. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
So we've talked a little bit about some of the negative impacts, some of the things that you've worked with your clients on to kind of help navigate them through some disruption in the market. The other side of that coin, and you kind of alluded to it for a minute or two, is companies that have grown really, really fast. The conditions we've had over the past few years have created a very lucrative opportunity for them. The construction field, the remodeling field, technology, healthcare, a lot of sectors have really just boomed. And so that's a real concern a lot of business leaders have, is growing too fast. How to not grow too fast without, causing major issues
Yeah.
that are long-term sustainability issues, right? For folks that are going through those types of challenges, good challenges to have, what are some of the things that you found, some of your strategies and things you've been working with your folks that other folks can benefit from and to prevent themselves from, cash flow problems, getting way out ahead of their skis and keeping up with the demand, those kind of things.
You used a very good term, getting ahead of your skis. Growth, large periods of rapid growth can be just as much leading to bankruptcy for companies as periods of decline. And the problem typically is financing. Folks fail to take into account how much their financing needs to grow and how much of that financing has to be of a permanent nature. Um, Company that I have that sells kitchen cabinet accessories, and their inventory has increased by 50% because their sales have increased by
Mm,
75%. But that 50% increase in inventory, which translates into multiple millions of dollars, is it it has to be financed long term, and that's either with long term debt because it can't be short term. It's going to be
hmm
there forever with this level of sales, or it's got to be financed with equity, and and in the long term, it's got to be financed with equity to lower the risk and just because it's permanent, it's always there. And so getting the financial underpinning in place for growth, sometimes that means there's some opportunities we don't exploit. Sometimes we got to pull back. Sometimes it means we need to raise prices because if you can't keep up with demand, your prices aren't high enough. I got to tell a war story because it's a great story. I had a young couple come in on a consulting engagement, and they were producing this stuff. It was a side hustle for them, and they were producing the stuff they were selling on the internet. And I won't get into the business, but the part of their problem they came in was saying we just got so much work to do. We got no life now. We do our regular W-2 jobs, and then we come home and all we do is produce this product and we can't keep up with the orders as it is. I said, what do we do? I said, well, do you want to quit your job and just do this? They said, not really. We really like what we do for a W-2 job. This is just a side gig. I said, well, double your price. And they said, well, we'll lose all kinds of business. I said, so what if you lose half of it? Double your price. If you lose half of it, you're even. And now you can actually have dinner instead of coming in and, eating a snack while you're trying to make these things. And you'd have thought I was a genius, but by their reaction, but it was pretty simple. And they did double their price, and business went down about 40%. So they ended up making more money with more time, um, and it didn't drop by half. So they said, what happens if all the business goes away? Well, I said, well, then just lower your price again. You're selling stuff on the internet. People are it's a pretty open
Yep.
market and you can adjust the price pretty quickly. So, I mean, that's one thing that you're trying to keep people focused, trying to keep them not from chasing every opportunity because it's just, it's like the dog chasing a squirrel and another one runs in its path. You got to chase the one down before you start chasing the second one. And it's also just knowing how much capacity you got. And part of the problem for some people is they don't know. They don't have the information
Mm.
systems in place, and they truly don't know where they stand. Um, I've seen people chase business to grow, and it turns out they weren't making any money on that business.
Wow.
That's a
That
problem
is
too.
true. Yeah.
So those things are the challenges of growth.
So it kind of leads us to kind of where we are now, right? Where this is the last week of September, going into October, starting the fourth quarter. From a financial standpoint, Alan, what's your best advice for business leaders out there that's about to start the fourth quarter? What are the things they need to be thinking about? What are some of their areas in which they need to really start focusing right now?
One thing that I tell people And this is kind of irrespective of what time of year it is, this one. But it's even more critical at
Yeah.
this time of year. You must know where you stand.
Mm.
So if your financial reporting systems, if your accounting systems are such that you can't tell what's going on, or you don't know where you're at right now, that's a problem, and it needs to get fixed right now. Accounting systems are the purpose of an accounting system is to give you the information you need to run your business. And if it's not doing that, then you need to have a different system in place. Um, if you're not keeping it up, then we got to get a system in place for you to keep it up, because you got to know what is going on. The other thing, so that's part of sort of this looking back. Part of this looking back is looking back now and saying, where do we think we're going? So we're looking back to see what it was, but what's changing and where do we go? Because now we're starting to plan into the next year. Starting to plan into the next year involves a couple of different things. One, where are we at? Where have we been? So we know what we got going on. How do we manage some things that may cut off at the end of the year? And I'm thinking here tax
Mm.
liabilities, right? Is there some stuff we want to do now between the end of the year to help us maybe keep some more money and not have some stuff being paid out as taxes? Not stuff that we wouldn't do anyway. I mean, that it's just a timing question. And as accountants, we always get excited about this. Is there something we should do at the end of the year that might be able to manage our tax situation a little bit better? Can we move some income between periods or move some expenses between periods? Those are some opportunities, but we have to know where we're at right now to know if that makes sense. And then we got to have some idea where we think we're going so that we know how to do
Mm.
that. If I'm going to buy a truck, if I'm growing and I'm going to buy a truck, or if I'm not growing but I need to replace a truck, when do I do that?
Mm.
Well, that depends, right? It depends on where we're at. It depends on our tax bill. It depends on our financing availability. It depends on a lot of things. I get really frustrated when folks, well, somebody said I needed to go out and buy a truck here in the last 2 weeks of the year, so keep my tax bill down. Well, maybe and maybe
Mm.
not. It's a little more subtle analysis than I need to buy this and cut my taxes. No, you don't if you don't need to. I mean, and maybe I don't need to do it this year. Maybe I need to put it into the next year. It depends on what we think next year looks like or the year after that. So part of this is, uh, 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 it's not taken just this short term view of the next quarter. It's taken a longer term view of the next year or a couple of years and think about where we're going and see if what we're doing makes sense going forward for the longer term success of the business rather than a short term tax
Mm.
thing. The tax tail should never wag the business dog. And I see that happen with people, you know, and they let the tax tail wag the business dog, and that's just wrong. The business has to do its thing first, and then we do some tax pieces behind things that make sense for the
Yeah.
business in the long term.
So what if people? Well, I've got another question. How many people really know their numbers on any given day? Business leader. From your experience, you've been doing this a long time, many many years. How many people know their numbers?
I would say very few. I would, in my experience, probably less than 10% got a really good,
Hmm.
solid handle on it. You know which are the most successful ones?
Ha,
Those.
ha.
uh, because, and it's not about trying to turn a business owner into an
Yep.
accountant. That's my job. That's not theirs. But understanding how they make money, understanding the flow, understanding the importance of doing some stuff. Let me give you an example. If you have somebody who thinks I made a sale, so now I've been successful, they're missing the point because they probably haven't gotten paid for that
That's
sale
right.
yet, right? So collections matter a lot. If all I focus on is sales, I may end up shutting down because people haven't
Yep.
paid me. On the other hand, how am I financing stuff? How am I and financing doesn't mean borrowing money necessarily. How am I leaving money in the business to pay for stuff that I know that's coming on? If I know, I mean, are you going to have to buy a new truck? Yes. I don't know when, but I know the answer is yes, because it's going to wear out. Am I going to have to buy a new gadget that makes the stuff? Yes. Or I'm going to have to fix it because it's going to wear out, it's going to break, something is going to happen. That should never be a surprise, right? I mean, it should never, to take that same thing into personal finance, right? It, amazingly enough, Christmas comes in December of every year, right? So buying Christmas presents should never be a surprise. It happens in December of every year. School starts in August, right? Or September. So I'm going to have to get Johnny new pants in August or pay for therapy later when he goes with the high water pants to school. So we know that's coming. That's not an emergency. It's not a surprise. Same thing of we got to replace the
Yep.
delivery van, right? Now it might break prematurely, but we kind of know when it's coming. So, and so many people don't plan, and that's part of knowing your numbers, right? I mean, that's not necessarily a financial number, but that's knowing what the numbers in your business are, that's going to come. Um, understanding why you don't get paid. A lot of people don't get paid because they don't
Yeah.
try to collect, or they don't try to collect quick enough, and they keep selling to people who aren't paying them. So I've got a multi-million dollar sales client that on average loses in bad debts less than $10,000 a year. You know why? Because it's due, in some cases, it's due up front. If you're a new customer and you want to buy their stuff, they'll sell it to you, pay them up front. Once you get established, will they offer you credit? Yes. What happens if it's due on the 20th and it's now the 21st? When you make the next order, you got to pay for that up front, and you got to make payments on the old stuff, or they
Yep.
don't ship it. Do they lose customers because of that? Probably, but they don't lose accounts receivable. And when you establish that kind of relationship and you set the ground rules for it, it's kind of amazing what people will do. In our business, for example, you pay for half of your work for the year
Right.
up front, and do people push back on that? If they do, I don't
Yeah.
want them as a customer, because that's how we think it's best for us to run our business. I don't know if that answered your
Oh yeah,
question,
no,
but
that was great. No, I loved it. I think the viewers and stuff are gonna gain a lot of value from that for sure, and that's important. I've even in my business, I've had people sign up for the services and never show up. I've had people you put time and money and effort into them and they just kind of ghost you. And then I've had people, not pay or, delay and I have to chase them down month after month. Hey, I get paid at the beginning of the month and here we are at the middle of the month. Where are we at on payment? I'm providing you my services, but yeah, you're not providing me the fees for those services. So this is becoming a one-sided affair real quick. And like any other business owner, your time is valuable. Your time is worth everything. And so uh, one of the things I'm taking away here, Alan, is one, you have to have a plan in a financial plan in addition to a strategic plan, because the financial plan should be a tertiary
yeah,
thing that is built to help the company achieve their overall strategic plan. And so if you're out there listening and you may be having some challenges or difficulties, maybe struggling this time of year trying to land this plane in the right way on the runway and not crash and burn at the end of the year, start getting organized. This is the time right now. You still have time left on the clock, and the most successful football teams are the ones that manage the clock, that look up at the scoreboard, pay attention to what's going on and what the score is and where they are in the game, and make adjustments to the playbook to adapt to that. I give this example a lot. If it's the fourth quarter, in fact, this just happened this weekend. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers played the Packers. It was a great game. And, here we go. Another, Tom Brady miracle in the making, right? They look up at the scoreboard, they look at the playbook, they got, less than 2 minutes on the clock and they're down by one score to tie the game and maybe take it into overtime. And so Tom Brady, puts things into play to give their team the best chance to win, marches them downfield. Now, the guy didn't make the catch and they ended up losing the game anyway. But the point is, if you know what the score is, you know where you are in the game, you give yourself an opportunity to meet with your team and figure out how to adjust the playbook to give your best chance to win. Sometimes that's a 2-minute drill. Sometimes that's something different. But this is the time of year when you need to be looking at, the performance of the first three quarters and what the performance of the fourth quarter need to be. You can't do that unless you know your numbers. If you have a system or the communicating with your accountant. I know people that have accountants that are really, really good like you, Alan, and they don't communicate with them very much and they don't get reports. They don't get data they need to
Yeah.
make really good, important business decisions. And they're just blindly doing things week after week. And it sets them up for failure every single time. And so, as we kind of wrap up today, Alan, what are the top three things would you leave the audience today that if they did nothing else but these three things, this would help them be successful in finishing out the year as strong as possible?
You know, I, I'm going to ease into that. You said something about football, and it brought a thing to mind that I want to throw in here. A famous football coach said, "The will to win is not nearly as so important as the will to prepare to
Hmm.
win." And so as we kind of have these artificial stops in our business year, we look at it on a calendar year, even
Yeah.
though it's a continuous process. And so because we have this sort of built into our thing, we got to have one of the things you have to do is just step back and step out of the business for a minute and start thinking about it. I mean, that's the strategic planning part, right? If you spend all your time just working in the business and never any time working on the business is
Hmm.
never going to get better. So part of it is getting that time scheduled to work on the business rather than in it. Working on the business might be getting my book straightened out, right? It might be figuring out where I'm at right now. And as we said before, I think that's critical. You got to know where you're at right now and where you're at. The other thing is, I think it's time, and I always encourage folks at this time of year to think about the financing of the business. Because as we look out, and we talked about this before, as we look out there, what are the capital needs going to be and where are they coming from? If we're thinking we want to grow, how are we going to finance the
Hmm.
increase in inventory? If we think we're going to grow and we're a service business, how are we going to finance that extra service truck? Where is that money coming from? Because if we don't plan it ahead of time, then we're out borrowing it, and we're borrowing it at a goofy interest rate in a way that probably doesn't make much sense. So we got to know where we are now. We've got the time that we have to carve out to think about where we are and where we're going. And then we got to start putting a plan in place so that we can be successful at getting to where we're going. And that has to have a financial component to it. It's got a people component to it. Do I have
Hmm.
the right people and all that sort of thing? And but it has certainly got a financial point to it, which is where my area of expertise is. So, so those I think are the most critical. Let's figure out where we're got, think about where we're heading, and make sure that we got the financial underpinning to get there from here.
Well said. Very well said. One thing I really love about you, Alan, is you're not a typical accountant that most people would think of, right? I mean, you sometimes when you talk to accountants, they can kind of talk over your head. They can get into this numbers and bean counting jargon that kind of confuses you. One thing I love about you is you keep things so clean, so simple, and just layman's terms and how you explain things. It certainly have helped me understand, things about finances, and I know, your clients, benefit from that as well. And so, Alan, I just want to thank you so much for taking time to be on the show today. It's been a great conversation. I know folks are going to get a lot of benefit from it. Critical time of year. The time is now. dig into your books, start talking to your financial people that manage those books, figure out where you actually are, where you're at with capital, where you're at with profitability, where you are with cash flow, and start sizing up what that looks like so that you can make really good, smart decisions on how you want to end the year, how you want to transition into the next year, when and where and how you want to invest. If you're going to invest, all of these things, timing matters. The amount of money matters because of all the dynamics that are going on with interest rates and loans and uh, just inflation. And you can, if you're not careful, you can set yourself up for fail in the long run trying to get instant gratification today. So it is a very your business is a very strategic thing. It's, and Alan's is a chess pro. He's in the chess federation and helps lead the international chess community. So he'll understand this analogy. Your business is not a checkers game. This isn't just make a quick move and see what somebody does, make another quick move and try to try to outdo somebody else. Business is like a chess game. You got to be thinking 3, 4, 5 moves ahead and strategically moving those pieces, sometimes, one at a time, sometimes together in unison to make your business thrive and succeed for the long run. And so, Alan, thank you so much for shedding light on that. I know people are going to get a lot of value from that. And so, Alan, tell people how they can learn more about you. If you don't have a really good accountant and bookkeeper and folks that are running your financial aspects of your business, if you're confused, if you're lost and you're not getting the things that you need to help you be a great leader, Alan is a great resource. Alan, how do they find you? What's the best way to get to you?
One of the best ways to get to us, right, quite frankly, is through our website. The website's out there. We got really creative on the name. It's Alan Priest CPA, and that's 2 L's and an E. So it's Allen, Allen, Priest, like the Catholic priest, CPA.com. And on that, there is a spot where you can sign up for a free consultation. So there's actually a link to the website link to my calendar in there. You can grab a half an hour for free and look us up that way. We're also, out there on LinkedIn, so you can find us through that as well, both the firm and me personally. So those are a couple of different ways. And the website's a really good resource. We've got a lot of stuff out there, a lot of information out there, calculators and tax bracket information and just things. How do you look up your refund from the IRS? We've got that link on our website too. So we've got a lot of good information there. And most importantly, you've got access to our calendar where you can just get on it for consultation. If you want to give us a call, you can. But if you put yourself on our calendar, we'll make sure to have the time for you when you try to reach out. And we have a lot of open time in the calendar. We save some time out there every week just for folks to be able to corral us who may be new.
Yeah, that's outstanding. Alan is a giver. He's a somebody that served in many capacities in many ways in the community, from the military to the Boy Scouts to the Chess Federation. He is a definitely a giver at heart. And he's got his website's great, been there many times, and he's got a ton of really good free information to help you. And he offers free consultations, as he said. So please visit alanpriestcpa.com. If you want to learn more about some of the other things that we talk about on the show or some broader business things in general, and you want to reach out, you can go to the show notes. You can connect with us at soarhighercoaching.com. Glad to have, free conversations with you to help you in every step of the way, just as Alan does. And we look forward to next week. Part 2 of the series is strategic planning. What the heck is it? What does it consist of? And how do you build one that will ensure your future success? We're going to get into that next week. Look forward to seeing you then. Have a great week.